Welcome to Synapse Sessions, where we talk with experts that are changing the game in e-commerce. Today I'm joined by Doug Pick, who built the brand Heroes Earplugs from a $15,000 investment to selling 500 million units through retailers like Walmart and Target before exiting to a multi-billion-dollar private equity group after 26 years. Doug reveals the critical mindset shift that Amazon sellers need when entering into brick-and-mortar retail, the hidden costs that blindside e-commerce brands, and the revenue threshold you need to reach before making the leap. We'll cover the 3 must-have criteria for retail readiness, the biggest mistakes that can put you out of business, and insider retail language that buyers expect you to know. So if you're an established Amazon brand wondering when and how to break into national retail, this conversation could save you from a lot of costly mistakes. Let's jump into the session.
You built Heroes from a $15K investment to selling 500 million earplugs through major retailers like Walmart and Amazon. For our audience of sellers that may be looking to expand to brick and mortar retail, etc., tell us about that journey. And feel free to insert any personal pieces, but also just kind of the mindset shift they need to make to do that.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah, I got started in the earplug business because I am a problem solver, probably like most CPG founders. And many, many years ago, I remember my brother said to me, "Hey, Doug, you got to try these." And he holds his hand out and he has these 2 white pieces of foam. And I'm like, "What is that?" He goes, "They're earplugs." And I go, "Okay, why do I care?" And he said, "Because when I wear them, I sleep great." And I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." So I tried it that night, and I just had a transformational moment where I was like, wow, that's the best sleep I ever had. And so I just continued to wear these earplugs to concerts, to sleep, travel, to study. This is going back to when I was a senior in college at USC in the USC Entrepreneur Program. And I just continued to wear earplugs. The problem was what was available to me as a consumer hurt my ears. And that didn't come to pass until I had left my dream job working in the music business for A&M Records. I was managing a rap artist that was more interested in chasing girls and smoking pot than he was in writing hit songs. And I realized in that moment that in order for me to realize my dreams and to execute to what I considered A+ levels, I needed to control my destiny. And so I just started looking at ideas. And when I would go to buy earplugs, I noticed that the stock levels were generally low. And I was kind of surprised by that. And I thought, wow, maybe this is a niche I should study. And that was one of the things that I learned in the USC Entrepreneur Program was doing what are called viability studies. And that is be prudent about your idea because people can fall in love with their ideas without really knowing what they're getting into. And before they know it, they've advanced not only their life savings, but their parents' life savings and haven't really done their homework. So when I looked at the earplug space, I said to myself, wow, here's a niche that is not going anywhere. People will use earplugs for sleeping, studying, traveling, concerts, swimming, anything to do with noise reduction, hearing protection, water protection. And there was no multinational conglomerate like a Procter & Gamble, a Unilever, any big player in the space that I'd have to compete against. Not to mention that there were no brand names. People referred to them simply as earplugs. And my concept was to create the first Kleenex of earplugs. And so I just dove in. And bear in mind, this is way before the internet even existed. So I was dealing, in my research, I was dealing with the phone. There was no Google. There was no anything. So I would be calling companies, researching. And ultimately, I created the Heroes brand name and found a local manufacturer that had a unique product that I thought consumers would really like because I liked it. I thought, wow, this is a great product. Came to market with it in late 1992. By 2008, I had created not only the #1 best-selling foam brand in Heroes, but the second best foam earplug brand called Sleep Pretty in Pink. The first earplug for women that sleep with snoring big guys. That became a huge sensation. And then in 2010, I took my saved pennies and built a state-of-the-art manufacturing company in Mexico, capable of producing 120 million earplugs a year, 125 full-time employees. Continue to build the brand, as well as design and supply private label products for Walgreens, CVS, Target, Rite Aid. So we were able to serve our retail partners with not only our brands, but also products that they needed for their store brands. And then in late 2018, I consummated a complete exit from all of my entities to a large multinational private equity group. And now I'm back in the CPG space with new innovations and an advisory and investment firm called Delightfully Disruptive that is designed to help emerging CPG founders who are generating in excess of 7 to 8 figures in top line, that is profitable, that want to make the leap into the national retailers and then scale their business to diversify, to grow sales, and ultimately to build enterprise value. That's really what I help people to do.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, so yeah, for people that are wanting to get into brick and mortar and retail, what are the top 3 criteria a product must meet before a CPG brand or that brand can consider that option?
I think, great question. I think really what it comes down to is, first, does the product have market fit? And if the CEO of the CPG brand is overseeing a company that's doing 7 and 8 figures, they certainly have product market fit. So then from there, one of the things that I help CPG founders and their teams to do is to get what I call retail ready. Because a company that is supporting Amazon or TikTok and DTC sales, the framework of their company, the language that they speak is much different than the language of retail. So if I mentioned the acronyms like MABD or POG or UPSPW, would you know what those are?
No, of course
Probably not. Well, MABD, so this is getting into the readiness, which is what I try to do is I help to translate for e-commerce CEOs, again, wanting to go into national retail, that there's a big difference when you're selling to, let's just say, tens of thousands of users, and now you want to sell to Walmart. Well, there's one person you need to sell in order to get into their 4,000 plus stores. But you have to understand the language. So when I mentioned MABD, MABD stands for must arrive by date. So your shipments, if you're doing Amazon FBA, you can ship in product whenever you want, really. Like, you'll get forecasts for when your product is going to sell out, and you could ship it in, but it's somewhat voluntary in a sense. Otherwise, when it comes to retail, if you don't meet your MABD, the must arrive by date, for Walmart or Target or Walgreens or CVS, you will be charged for it. And that's kind of the easiest way that you'll get out of it, is being charged, because the worst pain is ultimately losing the account. UPSPW is another term, which stands for units per store per week. That's the velocity by which your items sell or don't sell through the chain. And that also has to do with velocities. And how do buyers evaluate how your product is selling? If you're ahead of the average, they're going to like your products and they're going to want to see how they can expand the offering. And if your products underperform to the UPSPW, you're probably not going to last too long. And then you have to deal with chargebacks and the exit out of that. So it's a whole language just that I try to teach and knowledge transfer over to CEOs and their teams. I mean, the list really goes on and on. Mm-hmm. And ultimately what it comes down to is a wholesale list of metrics that I help the companies that I work with to understand, because there is a possibility that perhaps after we evaluate the company, the team, the product, the financial metrics, that we might say, gosh, you know what? Walgreens is not the right place for you. Gosh, Target's a good spot. Walmart's a good spot. Albertsons is a good spot. Maybe CVS is not. But we have to go through the process to evaluate all the different factors to ultimately land at what I call the stop or go moment. And that kind of brings up my book that I wrote. I'll share with you. I wrote this book to help founders. It's called Stop or Go. And it's the 25 critical factors that founders, CPG founders, need to understand before they start their journey. Because again, I'm all about prudence. I'm all about making smart decisions. I happen to get very lucky that I picked a product that facilitated profits. There are some products that people will get into that they have rose-colored glasses for how those products might perform and how they might make their fortune. But the reality can be much different. And through my book, I help people to understand that.
Okay. Yeah, I could see where your agency could come in handy in really helping people understand. It seems like it's a whole different ball game when you're talking about getting into retail versus Amazon and understanding that language. So yeah, really appreciate that. And I guess to dig into that a little more, I guess, because it's similar to how, well, first of all, yeah, if you're looking at someone who's selling on their website and they're deciding to get on Amazon, it's kind of like a similar thing where you have to like think about which product can be good to sell on Amazon. Maybe your entire catalog might not be good for Amazon. So it may be a similar thing. They have their set of Amazon products. You're going to help them decide like maybe which brick and mortar, or if it's like worth it at all, maybe. In some cases, you ever
Absolutely.
like turn them away completely and say it's just not a good idea?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that is part of the analysis. And part of what I did, and when I was CEO of Heroes, was before I met with any national buyer, I would do a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet evaluated what did my profitability look like? What did their profitability look like? And in the event that the numbers didn't make sense, I would pass on the opportunity. Now, with my particular case, the numbers generally always worked, but there was one grocery retailer that at one point we were in competition with another brand, and that other brand was, from my perspective, willing to work at a loss in order to earn that retailer's business, and we ultimately passed.
For those that do pass, the product development process for retail versus Amazon, like are there any packaging or branding adjustments necessary for that?
There can be. I was talking to one brand of creatine gummies, and they made their mark by selling 3-pound bags of gummies, big bags of gummies that had a $40 retail. And one of the things that we needed to do was look at, number one, is that compatible with the retailers that we want to appeal to? Because it could be that the shelf space or the peg space does not accommodate a bag that big, and ultimately a decision is made by the category manager. That person's also referred to as the buyer. They're the ones that manage the shelf, or what's called the planogram or schematic. And it could be that 3-pound bag just takes up too much space. It could be that the shelf space in between their products and the next shelf up is too small, so that 3-pound bag doesn't even fit. It could be that their product doesn't have a hang hole and only gummy products are on a hang tab. So there are innumerable factors that you have to look at. There's also the element of what's called shrink, which is today a lot of categories are behind plexiglass. So it's possible that your product is in a category where people are stealing it. So it has to be compatible with those planograms that are behind plexiglass. There was one situation with my product when we landed Target. We put the earplugs in what are called blister packs, and those are cards with blisters, clear plastic blisters on the front. And Target had and continues to have what are called push pin shelves. Now, when we went in to pitch the line to Target, we didn't know this. We didn't know how those shelves would react. So after we landed the account, we actually had to change our packaging and invest more into stronger blisters that would absorb the pressure of those push-pin spring-loaded shelves, because after the store associates would put the product into those spring-loaded shelves, product could get crushed, and nobody wants to buy damaged goods. So fortunately, we had the margin in order to invest in higher quality, more durable blisters in order to prevent that from happening. And we had great success with Target. But it's a lot of retail. And this is kind of what I try to educate CPG CEOs, founders, and executive teams on, is to help them understand that what they don't know, they don't know. And when they learn what they don't know, then they become just aware, and then they can respond and react towards it.
It seems like, well, in your book, you could probably go over a lot of those do's and don'ts. Like maybe they could, I guess, best to start there if they are looking to get into it. But could you share some of the biggest pitfalls that's maybe could put them out of business, or what's the single biggest mistake you see Amazon sellers make when they try to enter retail, or an Amazon or e-com seller in general?
Well, it really comes down to costs and mistakes. So the pitfalls that I help CPG brands to avoid, number one is their pricing structure. A lot of CPG brands, they are working off of their retail. So if you sell on Amazon and you're FBA, you know that a certain percentage has to be allocated to Amazon, and then to freight, and then to other marketing expenses. CPG with national retailers is similar. I would also say, though, that depending on the vertical and the channel of distribution, the margin requirements are different. So the worst mistake that a brand could make is to not know the expectations of what the retail category manager is going to expect when they buy the product. So, for example, let's say you have a product that sells for $9.99 on Amazon. And I'll get around to the other pitfalls around being in multi-channel or omni-channel. But, for example, if you have a product that retails for $9.99 and you believe, but you haven't confirmed that retailer can work on 40%, so you go in with a price of $6, not knowing that they need to work on 60%, going in with a price of $4, it's kind of end of game right there, because they're like, well, your metrics don't fit ours. Your product looks nice, but your pricing is way too high. Assuming that you had aligned properly on the margin requirements, then what you need to do is you need to plan for the other costs associated for working with a retailer. And I'll give you a few examples. With Target, let's say, Nick, you met with Target today and you have Nick's shampoo.
Okay.
or let's
maybe
do
like a beard wash.
Beard wash. We'll go with that instead. So we have Nick's beard wash. Greatest product, innovative, super cool. Guys love it. And Target, you meet with Target, you have two great items, and the Target buyer goes, Nick, we love this. We love to tap into your audience that you're driving online. We'd love to get started with you. And you're like, great, I landed Target. Well, the next thing is they're going to say, in order to get started with us, we have a new vendor setup fee. That's $50,000. Now we also have new item fees. For each new item that we load into our system, we're going to charge you back $15,000. So now for those two items plus the new vendor setup, you're $80,000 in the hole.
Wow.
So you may have an opening order. This is kind of how the metrics play out. You may have an opening order that, let's just say, is $20,000. So now you can take $20,000 off the $80,000 debt that you owe, and you're going to ship that $20,000. 2 weeks later, you're going to get a reorder for perhaps another $20,000. And then another week after that, you'll get $20,000 reorders. Well, after 3 additional weeks, you have level set that $80,000 investment. But now you have to wait 60 days in order to get paid on those orders. So now you're starting to see the chasm, the financial chasm that gets created. That's one piece. The additional piece is what we call MDF. That stands for Marketing Development Funds. And with MDF, those are when you see products on sale at Target, or I'll give you the example at Walgreens, which is kind of fun to work with. We worked with Walgreens almost my entire career of owning Heroes. We represented 1/3 of all earplugs that were sold through Walgreens during my tenure. Great relationship with that chain. And so with Walgreens, if we wanted to promote our product, so when you see products on sale, Walgreens doesn't pay for that. In fact, they charge the vendors for that, what's called an event. And so what we did is we had one item that moved on average per month without promotion, 16,000 units per month through Walgreens. On promotion, it had what's called a 50% lift, which means that it added an additional 8,000 units of volume sales for the month period that we chose. So that's 24,000 units. And the way that it worked with the chain was that we had to pay $25,000 for the right to offer the product to Walgreens shoppers. That was the entry fee. And then for every unit that was scanned at their register, we offered 40 cents. So 24,000 units for that month times 40 cents is $9,600. And then when you add the 25,000 plus the 9,600, you're now looking at a bill of $34,600 that you owe Walgreens, or I owed Walgreens for that month of sales. Now you may say, Doug, that's crazy. That's a lot of money. You're damn right, it's a lot of money. However, we needed to do that in order to continually show our growth with the chain. And we had factored that in to our budget of working with the chain, which brings up a point, which is there is no broad stroke in national retail. Every single retailer has its own game. I call it a game that they play, because the game is ultimately that the retailer is going to make money and we need to make money. If the retailer makes money and we don't, we're losing at the game. So every single retailer that a CPG brand works with is a different game. And you need to know what the game is before you go in, because you don't want to commit to things that just aren't meant to be.
Right. Yeah, it seems like all of those retailers, they're all their own separate corporate entities, and they all have their own rules that they play by and their own strategies for making money. So you have to align with that. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's where you could see like, okay, maybe you guys are a good fit for Walmart, not Walgreens, or vice versa, for example. I guess it could depend. That budget could come into play there, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. There are some situations. I'll give you another example of one of the tactics that are used in retail. Assume that, Nick, you have your great beard wash and you want to get into Target. We'll use Target again. And Target has 5 different vendors. You've identified that one of the 5 vendors is a dog and is not selling well for Target. Well, retailers don't take any hits. They're always positioned to win with their vendors, no matter what. So you come in and you present to Target. Again, the buyer loves your product. And there are those 2 items by that one vendor that are not selling. So you say, hey, company A is really underperforming to the units per store per week, and their trend is going negative. How about if we replace them? Now the target buyer says, okay, here's an opportunity. Nick, if you'd like, I've got X number of units in my distribution centers, and I've got X number of units in the store. The planogram's going to reset in 2 months. And if you were interested, I'm probably going to be left with about 15,000 units of each of those items, in addition to the new vendor setup, in addition to the new item slotting fees. How about if you buy those items back from me at my cost? That's called a buyback. And what that does is that provides it's called an exit strategy for the buyer to cleanly get out of a situation that's not working, that Target doesn't pay for. And I'm not saying Target does this. I'm just giving an example of, we have been in situations like that where we've bought our competitors' inventory in order to gain access to the shelves or the opportunity. But that is a cost consideration that must be contemplated, because now you're talking. You didn't know this going into that meeting with Target because you had planned out what the margin potential would look like over 12 months. Now you've been thrown a wrench. How do you deal with that? And can you afford to deal with that? And do you have the confidence that if you go with that move, it's going to work out for you? Because the financial commitment to that opportunity is now steeper than what you originally planned for.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you've talked about a few hidden costs. So for someone considering it, or thinking about what level they need to be at as far as top line revenue, like what is kind of like a minimum or a minimum budget to have ready to, on average, to get into retail?
Well, it really depends on how ambitious they set their sights, because, the dollars are big. And I would say a bare minimum would be 5 million in top line, because that is a company that has some maturity to it. 10 million would be even better. And then to know that they had financial wherewithal in order to cross that chasm of not getting paid for certain periods of time. There was a deal that after I sold my company, there was a deal I did at Walgreens where Walgreens transitioned to being a consignment opportunity. So for years we were on terms, and then they transitioned to, we will pay you for your items when they scan through the register plus 30 days. So we're not going to buy any inventory. It's kind of like FBA in a sense. Amazon doesn't buy any of that inventory on FBA. You get paid after it sells. And when I looked at that deal, I clearly could not have afforded that deal when I owned the company myself. But because my company was funded by a multi-billion-dollar private equity group, we could do that deal all day long. And it worked out from a margin standpoint. It worked out really well. It just was, in terms of a cash flow situation, it was too steep of a hill for me to climb as a solo entrepreneur.
Okay, I understand. And then also, like for some sellers or brands that may have limited resources, is there maybe a recommendation sometimes of going like for regional chains versus national retailers, or is there a smarter approach?
Yeah, great point. That's a testing ground, and that is a way to start to learn how does the buyer think, what's it like working with the chains, what are accounts payable experiences like, how do you navigate the purchase order, and how do you ship those products? How are your products packed? Are they compatible in the ways that the retailers will want them? The issue of freight is also, it's an often big mischaracterize cost because it's significant for small CPG items, and it's one that is when you're dealing with a local or regional chain, it's a great way to start.
Okay. Yeah, there is a lot. It sounds like, yeah, maybe it might be able to be a better idea to start small to begin with. But yeah, definitely a lot to it from what I'm hearing. And I guess that's where if people want to learn more, they should definitely check out your book first, which I'll leave down in the description. But also, tell us a little bit more about Delightfully Disruptive and the new products from DAP Ventures that you'll be launching that maybe can help.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of how people can learn more about CPG, a little bit more about my background for the moment, and I'm not sure when this podcast will be live, but Doug Pick, just my name, dougpick.com is a great place to read or listen to the first 5 chapters of my book for free. So that's something that I offer. And then I put together what I call a digital box set. It's called From Zero to Hero, My Journey to Sell 500 Million Earplugs. It's 5 different stories and insights about that journey. One of the stories, the last story in the box set is called How Making Earplugs Landed Me in a Mexican Jail, which is 100% true.
Wow, that's a good story.
It's a good one. It's juicy.
Yeah.
So the digital box set is available for free. There's other articles and podcasts that I've been on, so other insights that that your listeners may want to take in is there. And then what is being set up right now, it's not live just yet, but I'm launching Delightfully Disruptive. That is the advisory and investment firm services name. And that is really designed to help these people that we've been speaking about on this podcast, which is if you have product market fit, if your product is profitable, and you have a unique product that the national retailers don't have, and you understand the game that's involved, we can help you to get in front of the right people and explore those opportunities. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing more amazing than sitting with a national buyer and in 30 minutes having your life changed. Now, you don't know that when it starts, but I've had that happen to me many, many times with many retailers. It's really fun. It's very exciting. And it's also a little bit scary. So Delightfully Disruptive is coming in about 60 days. Today is the 14th of May. The other thing that I'm working on is several new, really cool, what I call delightfully disruptive brands. And delightfully disruptive for me translates really into 6 words: delight the customer, disrupt the competition. And that's what I look for in any new product. So after selling Heroes, decompressing from the experience of being the CEO of that company, I have created a new family of products across several different verticals. And one of the things I'll share with your listeners that's important for me when I bring out any new product is to either be the source of supply or be closely connected to the source of supply. And that essentially means the manufacturer of the product. If I don't have that, then I most likely will not look at the category for my own investments, because you need to have as much margin as possible in order to make the investment of time and money count. Because otherwise, if you're always worried about making margin on your deals, it's not going to be a fun journey. It will be very unfun. So I've got several brands coming. They're very cool. They're disruptive to each of the markets that they're going into. And it's kind of like a 2-year rollout for all of those. But the fun's back and the excitement's back. And I've allocated a percentage of my time to help CPG brands with Delightfully Disruptive.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds very exciting. And yeah, Doug, this has been really incredibly valuable to our audience and myself. So I appreciate you coming on and giving our audience a real insider's look at what it takes to really succeed in retail. And after building momentum on Amazon, of course, as most of our audience is doing right now, got to get to that level first. So maybe not something to jump into right away, but Doug's the guy to go to if you are ready.
Well, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to take introductory meetings with those brands that really fit into that, 5 million plus range of profitable sales, and those that are willing to learn, be coachable, and have that enthusiasm to be that student, to absorb the information that they need and make the changes, because it really is it's a different way of looking at the business. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, that said, to our viewers, if you did find today's conversation valuable, please hit subscribe and definitely let people know about this episode that might benefit from this. And we'll be back next week with another expert to help you grow your e-commerce business. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Doug, for coming on.
Thanks, Nick. It's been a pleasure.